Two subscribers to the Patreon separately suggested I make a video about sewing, and it never occurred to me that people don't know how to sew, because I don't know how to sew, and I sew things all the time. This is what I do know about sewing. Use strong thread. Don't use 100% cotton thread. Use a strong needle with a pretty big eye. Make sure you tie a knot that's bigger than the hole that the needle will bore into the fabric, so the knot is thicker than the needle. Tie off your stitches before the thread gets too short to tie a decent knot. And that's all I was ever taught about sewing. The rest one can figure out pretty much on one's own. I sew these lanyards on my keys and cameras. This incredibly strong type of ribbon is called gross grain. It comes in all sorts of patterns, but I love the Old Glory type because I'm American and I love it here. I cut the gross grain, then cauterize it with a lighter so the threads don't fray. And I cut the ends into little arrows so the scars don't stick out from the hem. I put a padlock on these lefty scissors 13 years ago, and that's why they're still sharp enough to cut fabric. If you use fabric scissors to cut paper, eventually when you need them most, they will fail to cut the fabric without fraying it up into a rat's nest. The padlock deters those who don't care about such important matters as the sharpness of fabric scissors. Before I do an integration, I vet the company, and I vetted Skillshare by joining Skillshare and checking out their creative writing classes. Above all, compelling videos are well written. I saw that Skillshare had creative essay writing classes. All of my videos are essays. I call them industrial essays. I watched a couple of Ashley C. Ford's lessons. She immediately recommends things to read. I love it when writers do that. And I scrolled down for more writers and found Susan Orlean, began watching, and was like, okay, I'm doing the Skillshare integration. And here we are. Susan Orlean wrote The American Man at age 10. I read it in college, and I've been trying to write in that vein ever since, for 27 years or whatever it is. It's a landmark story for me. I only take advice from people who have done the thing, and Skillshare is full of lessons and videos from folks who have done the thing. Skillshare offers the macro skills and the micro skills to do your creative work. Sure, making videos is writing, shooting, editing, but it's also freelance and entrepreneurship, productivity, marketing, and personal development. Creative people will be creative no matter what, so we need guardrails. And when we have guardrails for our creativity, we can steer it in optimal directions. I wish Skillshare had existed when I was 20. You're lucky. If you're trying to do creative stuff, if you're trying to get better or go pro, I say join Skillshare, learn as much as you can. Click the link in the description of this video, and the first 1,000 of you who join Skillshare get 1 month for free. Thank you, Skillshare, for supporting the channel. How long does it take to sew these lanyards? Let's see. I want this one tailored to my right hand. This knot was temporary, about 2 years temporary, until I had the opportunity to commit to its fit. For strength and neatness, I fold the arrows under what will be the seam, like when you clasp your hands together like this. and then safety pin it. Thick needle, big eye, strong thread. I don't know exactly what this thread is called, but I think it's used to sew heavy leather like baseball gloves, and it's coated in wax. It's totally overkill for this application, but I tend to overbuild when I sew. I bury the first knot under the seam. I think this stitch is called a running stitch, like the stitches on the hem of your blue jeans, which are sewn by a sewing machine. When we sew by hand, we have to sew a length of stitches across the ribbon, then go back and retrace our stitches in the opposite direction. People have suggested to me for decades that I should get a sewing machine, but my philosophy is if it requires a sewing machine, I have someone else do it. And I don't tailor my clothes. I have professionals do that, and professionals use sewing machines. Machines are cumbersome, and the thread route is really confusing. The good machines are the old ones, and the old ones are not idiot-proof. The slow work of this lanyard sewing ritual, I'm convinced, prevents me from losing keys and cameras. This sewing ritual bonds the keys and cameras into my subconscious, I think. I have, thank God, only lost one camera, and I haven't lost keys, thank God, in maybe 20 years or more, and I think this ritual has something to do with that. Sewing by hand is slow, but somehow it seems slower. I used to save sewing projects for long airplane rides. Sewing is the second least sophisticated level of repair and the first technically significant level of repair. Sewing is above taping, but below gluing, believe it or not. I was wearing these 501s when I looped my motorcycle attempting a balance point wheelie, landed on my ass, tore a hole in the pocket. I hand drew the Levi's stitches with a gold paint pen. I plugged the hole with an iron-on patch, but iron-on patches must be sewn for permanence. The iron-on glue holds them in place while you sew. I got these jeans in Onomichi, Japan, and they're the famous Japanese denim. They're not Levi's brand, but I hand sewed the Levi's stitches on the pockets for fun. These might be the most repaired article of clothing that I own. Patches on patches. So much labor, I can't bring myself to throw them away. People who are not handy but wish they were handy sometimes ask me how to get started. And I think sewing is a good entry point for working with your hands. Hand sewing.